The camera pans across a poised army as my boisterous general gives a fiery speech about honor and victory.
This will be a day long remembered in our history, a day when two mighty armies clashed.
And I'm transported back to the virtual battlefields of a time long past, 2004. Total War Rome Remastered is a very faithful recreation of the series' first fully 3D expedition, with some modest but notable graphical and UI updates. But as astounding as it was at the time, the aging gameplay hasn't gotten the same attention and doesn't hold up all that well compared to its successors as a result.
These are good places. Our gods live here, in the trees and rivers. They watch over us.
The most obvious upgrades in Total War Rome Remastered are visual. In fact, Creative Assembly insists that the moving parts underneath are essentially unchanged, so everything from spies on the campaign map to a unit of Triarii on the fields of Italy should behave more or less just as it would if you fished out your old CD-ROMs from wherever they're wedged right now. And no doubt it's an impressive facelift, especially when it comes to lighting and terrain details. The units, though, don't quite hold up to the level of fidelity we're used to in modern Total War, or even 2013's Total War Rome 2, which is itself almost 8 years old by now. And that's kind of a running theme with this remaster. Total War Rome was ahead of its time in so many ways when it came out, and all of those great ideas are still here, dividing Rome itself up into 3 factions that are set off in 3 different directions to conquer before ultimately meeting each other in a bloody civil war at the end was a fantastically effective way to keep the late game challenging and interesting with fairly simple, transparent mechanics. There are even a couple things in here I think the original Rome did better than the games that came after it, like having to physically send a diplomat across the map to treat with other factions. But in most other ways, it's simply fallen too far behind the times. Strategy games in general, and Total War specifically, have evolved so much in the last 18 years that going back to the original Rome can be deflating. The AI is one of the primary culprits. If you're coming from Total War 3 Kingdoms or Warhammer 2, the various Gauls, Greeks, and Carthaginians you'll match wits against here won't feel like much of a match at all. It's relatively easy to beat entire armies just by microing your cavalry well, for example. The enemy tends to play very passive and can easily be lured into can-I-like traps over and over again. It felt like going back in time as an adult to beat up on my middle school bully. The included Barbarian Invasion expansion was incredible in its day, but within the first handful of turns revisiting it, I was struck by the fact that it's basically a more primitive version of the excellent Total War Attila, and I'd really rather be playing that. The fact that the map is smaller and there are fewer factions isn't necessarily the issue. In some ways, actually, Total War works better with this reduced scope. But it's missing so many years of iteration and refinement of the formula that I wondered if it wouldn't have been worth including some more substantial, gameplay-related quality of life changes. The UI is definitely much improved, especially in terms of readability. That's usually the part of older strategy games that drives me up a wall the fastest, since modern games have gotten so much better at it. But Rome Remastered still doesn't offer up information as cleanly or as easily as its descendants. It's cleaner, but it's still dated. Getting more detail on how a specific building or unit works might be a pain or just impossible, and it seems like Feral Interactive has gone out of their way to keep the look and feel of a 2004 strategy game UI when I would have probably rather they shinied and polished it up a bit more. There are a couple places where Rome Remastered has added totally new features, and they're kind of neat. For one, there's a new experimental unit size that allows for even larger battles in terms of the total number of troops than even modern Total War games have without mods. This made the trade-off for lower resolution fighty guys seem more acceptable, as I was able to orchestrate some truly titanic ancient clashes. You could also play as any faction right from the jump, whereas the original game required you to beat each one while playing as Rome to unlock them, unless you want to do it the old-fashioned way. Oh, and the music still totally slaps. Total War Rome is still a standout strategy game, and this remaster makes it more fun to look at and easier to play. It's a little underwhelming to go back to for a series veteran when newer Total Wars have modernized design, UI, and AI opponents so significantly. But there's plenty of nostalgia to be had, and those pre-battle speeches can give me chills just like they did in ancient times. For more games that have gotten spruced up recently, check out our reviews of Doom 3 VR Edition and Disco Elysium The Final Cut. And for everything else, keep it right here on IGN.
So we fight to keep what is ours. What must stay ours. There can be no peace. No peace with Romans, men of stone and